Welcome to the Concert Queen Connect. Today is going to be a different episode because it's going to be a follow-up to the episode last week with Curtis Rausch. It was an emotional episode that I obviously was not expecting, and I really appreciate the support that I received and even the people that respected my wishes of not wanting to talk about it and not wanting to give a lot of energy to it. That is something that happened, like I said, while I was in Dallas. So I wanted to give more context to it. And I also wanted to speak to, kind of what I went through, what my experience was. And hopefully my intention from sharing this literally stems from the fact that I want to help other women who have, which, like I said, it's alarming how many women have gone through this. And I really, really appreciate Curtis holding space for me while I talked about that, as well as Steve that was here filming. But it was a very difficult thing to share. And the emotional, I really kind of sat with it afterwards and really thought about why and what it was about everything that not only was it emotional, but then what came up for me after that and why I was on the verge of having a panic attack again. And I think that's to say as well that this was a trauma that was kind of buried deep, but also something that I have personally dealt with. And the pain and what you saw of me being emotional stemmed from literally all of the repercussions of what I went through when that happened, and the pain that what you saw was the pain that I felt when I was at the lowest point in my life. And all that to say that, it was a journey, obviously, to get to where I am now and even where I sit today. And so I want you, and I hope that you take away from this that things like that, they're not okay. And while they do happen, I did not let it take me down. I did not let it, I didn't let it define me, and it still doesn't define me to this day. And, it's not my identity. It's not who I am. So I'm going to take it back to the context of, I don't want people making assumptions about what they think happened or what happened, but I know that there's probably a lot of women that can either identify with this or, basically empathize with this story. So I had just moved to Dallas. I did not know a single soul there. I knew maybe like friends of a friend. I was introduced, there was a guy that I had just started kind of seeing, as a friend, and we kind of just started seeing each other while I was there. And I, like I said, literally just moved there, took this job, and was just kind of going through getting, my lay of the land while I was there. And there was a direct manager, not my direct manager, but there was another manager that was part of this company that I worked at. And I went to the company Christmas party. This was an event that I'd already been with this company for years. I knew all the people here. I knew all the people that were going to the Christmas party. It was a very safe space for me, and where I felt safe, I knew everyone. I did not bring that guy that I was seeing because to me, this was like my work family, and these were the people that I saw day in and day out kind of thing. So went to the Christmas party and was even dressed super, super conservative, ultra conservative, which sucks too that that's kind of stigmatized, but I just want to give that context as well. I was wearing a red turtleneck and was dressed very conservative. So in my head, here I was being this unassuming person and going to this Christmas party that with my coworkers, just like any other year that I had. But like I said, this was with a new group of people that I had known. Went to this Christmas party, and, it was towards the end of the night. and I had a hotel room at the hotel that we were all staying at, that we had like a sales meeting or something at before. And I received a text from one of the managers who was like, hey, like we're all in this room. And it wasn't out of the ordinary to go and party in other people's rooms or like hang out afterwards, or like, you get home from the bars. And I mean, I'd been with this company for a while. And so there was constantly just different sales meetings and different events and things like that. So this was completely in the same realm of normalcy for me. So I get this text, I go to the room and I walk in, and there was no one else there except for that particular manager, who then proceeded to force himself on me. I was trying to get out of it. I was in shock, as people are in those types of situations. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't believe that someone that I had known for years would, one, do this, and two, think that this was okay. So in that state of shock, I managed to get out of him being, trying to force himself on me. And he was blocking the door. I ended up it's such a blur too when all this was happening, but I was able to escape, because that's literally what it was. I was being trapped in that room, and I ran back to my room. And when I got back into my room, I just sat in between. I had like 2 queen beds, and I sat in between and I just cried. And I heard a knock on my door. I started crying even more, and I was just trying to hide, and I was shaking, and I had no one to call. I was calling my friends at the time, the only people I knew that lived in San Diego. Those were my friends at the time, and no one answered. And, my phone started ringing in the hotel room, and nobody answered. I didn't answer the call. So like I said, there's obviously more in that sense of just feeling that shock and feeling completely violated. And also this being my place of work, this being my identity, this being everything that I knew, and why I even moved to Dallas. So the next day, I cried myself to sleep that night, and I didn't leave. I left the hotel and was just in this complete state of shock, and didn't leave my apartment for 2 weeks, or at least a week and a half. I was so it was that point of just like not knowing what to do, what to say, who to tell, where to go. I was just trying to think of my exit plan. Like, okay, I can just leave this company. I can just get out of here. And one day, one of my friends within the company called, and I couldn't even hold it in. I was at that point where I was so depressed and so sad that I had no control over my emotions. And I told this person, who then had to report it to the company, which was not something that I wanted. I did not want, and like most people that are in this situation, you don't want that attention. You want to shrink and you want to hide. So to have that be publicized when you didn't want it to, that's a whole other thing, which is kind of where, like I said, when we talked about it, I wasn't necessarily something I wasn't ready to share, but I also it wasn't something that I probably would have ever just voluntarily shared unless it came out like in the context that it did. So throughout the course of that, there were all those different emotions that I went through, of shame, of feeling like, wow, what did I do? And I think that's a really like probably number one, like common thread that I feel like anybody who is a victim of sexual assault or sexual abuse, you feel shame. Like, what is it about you, or what is it that there's that guilt of like, what did I do to deserve this? Why me? And it's terrible. That is a terrible way to have to feel, but also you can't help it. And there I was like going through everything, trying to figure out what did I do? What did I do to not to deserve this? But what was it that here I thought I checked all the boxes of my own safety, of how I looked, of how I felt, who I was around. And I checked all the quote unquote boxes, but it did not protect me in that moment. And so when my family, same thing, had called me randomly because they hadn't heard from me. And I'm telling y'all, when I went into like a hole, I went into this hole, a deep, dark hole, a dark time, and told my parents, and I had no control over my emotions. And my dad came to stay with me, which was another thing, to have to put your parents through something like that and have to let them hear that. And I'm sure there's parents out there, you don't ever want to hear or get a phone call like that. So there was that shamefulness of feeling guilty of, I don't want to make this phone call, but it's the reality of the situation. And my parents and my family were very supportive. They never once made me feel like it was my fault or that because it's not. And when something like this happens, it's not your fault. And that's what I later learned through therapy. I had never gone to therapy, but as this information came to light within the company, I did not have a voice in any of it. The narrative began to get skewed, and people began to form their own opinions about me based on something that I had no control over. They just saw me. They made assumptions about me. They retaliated in a way that made me feel like I was this terrible, awful person and woman that would be in this situation. And I remember I had to get on meds because I was not able to control my emotions at the time of this traumatic event. And I was starting to have panic attacks. I'd never had a panic attack before. And so the idea of going to a meeting, a sales meeting or anything like that around these people who had their own ideas about me gave me the worst anxiety that I'd ever had. And I went to this meeting because I had to. And prior to that, probably like a week before I even said anything or this came out, the man who did it, he called me. And it was a phone call that I was dreading. I knew it was going to come because I did share one account with him that I had to work with him on. And he called me, and I knew I was going to have to take the call because I had to talk to him about this account. And when he called, we talked about, it was just very small talk. And we talked about what had, this particular account. And then he was like, can we talk about something? And I knew it was coming. And he asked me if he just apologized. He was like, I am sorry. I drank too much and I should have never done that. And I immediately lost it. I asked him, I was like, why? And I think that's the number one question is like, why? That's what women, we feel is, why? Why me? Why did you choose me? Why did you think this was okay? And those were the questions that came up immediately that I had been obsessively thinking about over and over and over again. And that's what I did and I asked him those questions, and he didn't respond with any answer in particular. He just told me, I'm sorry, and it will never happen again. Shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. It'll never happen again. And that was the end of it. And that's when, like I said, it all came out, and it changed my life forever. When everyone found out about it, that was the last thing I wanted. I did not want the attention, as most people that go through this don't want the attention. You want to hide. You want to shrivel up into a ball and hide. And I was now exposed. People that I had respected so much and that I wanted to respect me had zero respect for me, had zero regard. And I'll never forget going to this meeting and sitting down, and people that were around me literally got up, and they got up and they moved. to the other side of the room. So they collectively made a choice not to speak to me, not to talk to me, and to make me feel like an awful person, which had they known, and I want to believe that, but I can't make it here or there whether or not they'd change their mind if they knew the truth. But it sucked. It sucked to have my coworkers turn against me, my company turn against me, the guy that I was seeing at the time. I was obviously in a state of shock, and he told me that I was effed up in the head and that I needed to seek help and get therapy, and left and never heard from him again. So completely abandoned by everyone in that moment besides my parents. And this was not something that I wanted to share with anyone, that I wanted to get in contact with anyone about. I was truly alone. And I say all that because that was a very crucial moment in my life where I'd never felt that alone. I'd never, up until that point, I still am a very social person, but at that point I was still very social, but also very cognizant of other people's feelings, and just live this life of just wanting to have fun and just hang out with people and connect. And there wasn't anything that I could have done differently in that situation. There's literally absolutely nothing. And if people have different views on that, that's on you. I can't control that. So what proceeded to happen was, like I mentioned before, there was a lawsuit that occurred, and to protect myself and my reputation. But that was another reason why I never wanted to talk about it, because I did not want there to be that black mark next to my name and carry that for the rest of my life. And for anyone that's gone through this, my heart goes out to you, because it's not something that you're just constantly re-traumatized over and over again, having to speak about it, having to talk about it. And that was where I was introduced to therapy, simply to get my nerves and things like that under control, and to understand what was happening and where this was coming from. So, and to talk about the trauma and to really work through that. And so one of the things that the therapist that I was seeing at the time explained to me, because I would come in there and I would cry and just trying to make sense of it, which I think is something that a lot of women also go through, is you're trying to understand it. And she told me, you can't make irrational behavior. And that was something that really stuck with me, because once I figured that out, and once I really kind of sat with that, I understood. It was like, wow, she's right. I can't, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter what I tell myself, this is never going to make sense. And I was still kind of going through the motions. I started taking antidepressants and just trying to get the wheels turning again. Like we mentioned in my podcast with Curtis, was, that was my first bout of depression that I'd ever felt. And feeling alone and leaving San Diego, a place I absolutely loved and a place that I wanted to move back to, was heartbreaking. To now live in this place that I was more alone than ever, and to basically like associate everything in my pain with that job. I was literally living in the same job, doing the same thing, and just having to constantly be around the trauma every day. And what I realized was, like I said, going to different therapists. The therapist that really changed my life was the last therapist I went to, because I left that first therapist, like I mentioned, because I was not gaining any value from that to a point. I was looking for more. I was looking for something to move forward and progress to. And when I met with him, he was so blunt, but to a part where it was like, he looked like Santa Claus. So it was like, every time I came in there was this like warm, obviously like, do I leave cookies out for him? Like, what do I do? But he was just such a gentle, kind soul, but also gave me some very stern advice. And I would tell him, hey, I can't get out of bed in the morning. And he's like, you can get out of bed. And I was like, no, I can't. And he's like, you have 2 legs. They both work. You can get out of bed. So when I say that kind of stern advice, which was right, he was exactly right. I was choosing not to get out of bed. And then the same thing where the kind of our final sessions was me, and I kind of alluded to it, where I was going to join this support group. And I wanted to maybe feel like, okay, if I talk to these other women about this, then maybe that'll be a place where I feel supported. And he told me, absolutely not. That's not a place that you're not going to identify with this. This is an event. This happened to you, but this is not going to define you. And he's right. And that is my mantra. That is what I have lived by. That one piece of advice was such a catalyst for my entire pivot and the change that I did in those times. From that moment on, I don't know where I heard it. I don't know where I saw it, but I came across The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and that changed my life. If you're not familiar with that book, I highly, highly, highly suggest it. It is a life-changing book. It is very simple. I have it on I have it on audiobook. I have it, the actual physical book. I gave it to my family for Christmas, but it is life-changing. And when one of those 4 agreements was that you cannot control the actions of other people, and what they're doing has nothing to do with you, that made all the change in my life. It helped me move forward. It helped me move past the event. And the other agreement that changed my life, and there's 4, was about not making assumptions, because I wanted to sit there and I wanted to make assumptions about why he did what he did to me and what other people were thinking of me, and all these different things, all these voices that were playing in my head about what happened. And they were all assumptions. I just assumed the worst when it was all just to protect myself. So from that point, and from reading that book, and from moving forward, and from journaling, and from really discovering myself, I decided to become a life coach. And in that life coach period, it was another 10-month long course, and I was able to really be given the tools to process this trauma for myself, how to get me to move forward, to help propel me to achieving my goals, and not sitting in there and living in this victimhood that was so easy and could have been so easy for me to just sit in, because there's power in people being victims, and it feels good to be consoled, but that is why I will not sit in that victimhood. I wanted to move forward. It was like, this is not my identity, still not my identity. And I don't place my identity in these things, even in this platform, in all these other things, because in one moment, my whole identity was stripped away from me and I did not know who I was. So this event, this time, was the catalyst for me to be who I am now. And I would not be sitting here in front of you. I would not be the same person had that not happened to me. And I'm not saying it's right. It's definitely fucked up and it's wrong, but it's part of my story. It's not who I am. And if I can sit here in front of you with the strength that I can get through anything now, and I've changed my viewpoint, I've done the work on myself. But to come from a place that was so dark and empty and lonely to where now I feel supported, I feel loved, but also I love myself. And it took a long freaking time. I will tell you that. I don't think that's something that you ever just kind of get over. It's just, you learn to respond to it versus react to it. So what you guys saw was all of that stuff coming up for me that I hadn't spoken about. And I was reliving that trauma of sharing it and feeling that embarrassment. And that was my initial instinct and reaction. And my heart just went out to my Dallas self of knowing what she went through and what other women are going through. And where that trauma was reactivated, like we talked about, was me going to Sprouts and just trying to buy groceries, literally just trying to buy groceries, and this man harassing me. And I realized that that kind of layered with the conversation, just brought up that trauma of here I was when that happened. You know, when I was at Sprouts, I was in what I thought was a safe place. And that was same kind of situation. So weirdly enough, I actually haven't even been back to that Sprouts since. It's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks since I've been back there. And naturally, this is the kind of stuff and it's the kind of shit that women have to deal with. And it's fucked up. It's not okay. To the men out there who think that this is, I just want you to know that the things that you say and the things that are so casual to you do have a lasting impact on women. And words do have power. Even though you're joking, like, let's be real, you're not. There's been instances where if rejection sucks, and we know putting yourself out there is tough on both genders, all genders. But when you do it and you're rejected, it hurts. And so what do? You protect yourself and you say certain things. But just know that unless you're being invited, if a girl respectfully declines you, or if you don't know what that girl has been through. You don't know what place she's speaking from, what she's gone through, what kind of trauma. Maybe she's in therapy, maybe she's going through it. Who knows? Bottom line is that just should never happen to a woman, period. And there's resources in the sense of, and I'm going to do my research. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which I had no idea about until when this came up for me. And then I randomly saw these things. So I'm good. I want you to know that. I feel like there's been this weight lifted off of me, and the messages that I received from women that stand in solidarity with me, I also stand in solidarity with you. And I want you to know that you're not alone. But you will get through this. You can move past it, and you can build the life of your dreams and the life that you want to live. You just have to keep moving. And whether that's one day at a time, one sock, 1 foot, one shoe on at a time that you're doing, as long as you're doing it for yourself and you're finding a reason. And that's why we talked about mental health keeps coming up repeatedly over and over again in all of these shows, but that's how pivotal it is, because that's not something that you can physically see. You know, if I want to go wash my hair, have a different hairstyle, I can go physically do that. If I want to change something about my body, I can go work out. You can go do whatever you want to do. But when it comes to your brain, that is something that is such a complex thing. And you have to really kind of untangle those triggers and those branches and the things that are interwoven in your brain to understand yourself and do the work. So thank you for hearing my story and supporting me. And like I said, I do feel like I'm in a better place. This was the one thing that I didn't think I was ever going to share. I just kept it to myself, but I'm here. I'm strong. I feel, what's the word? I feel I don't know if refreshed is the right word. I feel renewed is the word I'm looking for. I feel renewed. I feel like now I can finally just let it go. I'm at peace with everything. I've forgiven the person that has done this to me. I've forgiven those people who have retaliated against me. I've moved on, and I choose to be bigger, greater, more powerful than I was before, and stand on top of that and move forward. And this isn't necessarily trying to get all these other women to move forward. I never joined like the Me Too movement, and I respect all those people that went through that. That is part of your story. But this, in the dance community, in the music community, we are constantly around, it should be like a really feel good time. And so what I ask is that you look out for each other. Men, look out for your friends, look out for your female friends. Females, look out for other females. If you see something, say something. Look out for one another. And also be there to support. If this spawns something in you, if this touches something in you and you feel the need to go and now get therapy for it, maybe the timing's now. Maybe there's a reason for all this. So I just want you to know that you can do it. You're not alone. People want to paint a picture of my life and who I am. And I'm very, what you get, what you see is what you get kind of person. And I pride myself on that. But I just want you to know that I'm here and that there are brighter days. There'll be some dark days, but there will be brighter days and you survive. So thank y'all so much. I appreciate all of the people who have been on this journey with me, and we continue to have these amazing conversations. And, there's people that, the connection that I'll always have to Curtis will be a special one. And I would not have those types of conversations if I didn't have this podcast. I didn't have you supporting me and commenting, liking, sending me messages. I really appreciate it. And y'all know I do. I'm so humbled to have that and to be connected to you. And you are part of this journey. I get people that are like, oh, I feel like I'm on this journey with you. And you 100% are. I would not have this platform, like I said, if it weren't for you. And I love talking to you and seeing the growth in your life and seeing how I impact that in a positive way. And I hope that we can continue to move safely with music. And I can't wait to dance with you, sing with you, talk to you about those positive things in your life with music and the community. So thank y'all for respecting that as well. I hope we can continue that. And thank y'all for respecting my privacy as well. And when I'm out and about, that I do want to just have a good time. I'm not trying to be reminded of a trauma. But like I said, there's a time and a place for that. But it's definitely not when I'm out. And y'all know that if you've seen me out and you've seen me having a good time. So I thank you so much for respecting that. If you do have questions or you want to talk about something, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, ATX Concert Queen, or hello@atxconcertqueen.com. All right, guys. Love y'all. And I will see y'all next week.